Kahn. So you have been fully warned. Oops. Well, at least you remembered to get here in time, Chris. Everybody who has not already done so, please mute yourselves for the duration of the presentation. If you have questions during the talk, you can put them into chat. And we will take those questions first at the end. I almost forgot my cute little light. And then if we have more questions after that, we can take live questions also. Vivian's wonderful about answering questions. She sees all, she knows all, at least about Hungarian Jewish research. Oop, I got to stop talking. So Vivian Kahn is a longtime member of the San Francisco Bay Area Jewish Genealogical Society and one of the world's renowned experts on Hungarian Jewish research. She's certainly one of the experts within the Jewish genealogy world I know of. And I'm very happy that we were able to get her to give us a talk today. So that said, she is going to start now because I'm giving the floor to her. Thank you, Vivian. If anybody has any problems, feel free to put something in chat and I will follow up.
Thank you, Janice. It is marvelous to see all of you, particularly lots and lots of familiar people. Al from Miami and Dan Rottenberg, who was one of the first resources I used when I started researching my roots in Hungary. I found his book in the Berkeley Public Library. So I was absolutely thrilled when I met him and was able to help him with his research. And Margarita and Debbie Corman, who's from Oregon, and Barbara Hershey, and I saw that Eric Block had also signed up, and I actually might call on Eric to give his own update of what he's been doing with the other census records, because I was going to talk about that as well. So to get into it, let me get out of this and into my show. Okay, so I'm going to start off with a little bit about Austro-Hungary just to set the context. As I know many of you are well aware, but I still find some new researchers are. What was that? Some people are.
Salut. Please mute yourselves during Vivian's talk. Thank you. I'm trying to mute everybody myself, but I missed someone.
Okay, so I'm providing a little context here. I mean, there are some people who, when they see records that say Austria, they think their family is from Austria. If they see Austro-Hungary, they think they're from Hungary. So just a little review to get an idea of the context here. And then I will be talking about why parts of Austro-Hungary are particularly important for those who are researching families from Hungary. So the partition of Poland created Galicia in 1772. And what this did was start a tremendous amount of migration from Galicia to Hungary. What I'll be talking about, and what some of you know, is Hungarian Jews came into Hungary both from the west, northwest, from areas that were in Austria-Hungary, outside of Hungary, but in Bohemia or Moravia, and are now in the Republic of Czechoslovakia. And those were among the first Jews to arrive, to immigrate to Hungary. But beginning in 1772, there was this significant migration of Jews into Hungary from Galicia. Prior to that time, there had been a head tax, and once Galicia became part of Austro-Hungary, they lifted that tax. There was, particularly through the 19th century, but continuing into the 20th century, and I'd say perhaps continues to this day, somewhat of a conflict between the Jews who trace their roots to Galicia and those who were in Hungary earlier or came from Bohemia and Moravia.
Vivian, did you intend to be sharing your screen so far?
Yes. Can people see it?
No.
Oh, sorry about that. Let's go back and see why is the screen not being shared. Oh.
As much as we love listening to you.
Okay, let's try again. No. When we did this before, Janice, it worked. So why?
Yes, it did. I will vouch for that.
Why isn't it working now? Oh, wait, let's see.
Have you been made host?
Okay.
She was sharing fine before.
Okay.
Don't need to be a host.
Okay. How's it now?
Aha. There we go.
Okay. All right. I'm screen sharing. And let's do it from play from current slide. Okay.
There
Can
we go.
everybody see it now? Ah, sorry for that glitch. Okay. So there continues to be some conflict. The Jews who came to Hungary from Galicia tended to be far more observant. They were by and large of lower economic status. The other Jews who had been there earlier sort of looked down on them. The Jews who came from Bohemia and Moravia ended up by and large becoming neolog, that branch of Hungarian Jewry, as opposed to the status quo ante, the Jews who remained Orthodox and some who were Hasidic. So a lot of conflict there. 1804, Francis II became the Emperor of Austria. And in 1867, following a rebellion of Hungary against the Habsburgs, a dual monarchy was created. This was an agreement between Franz Joseph, who was then had become the Emperor of Austro-Hungary, and the Kingdom of Hungary. So it was called the dual monarchy because Hungary continued to have its own parliament, pass its own laws, although it was still part of Austria-Hungary. And those of you who had relatives who fought in the First World War may be aware the Jews from Hungary were part of the Austro-Hungarian army. In 1919 to 1920, after the end of World War I, Austria-Hungary was defeated by the Allies with dire consequences, both for Austria-Hungary, those areas that were not in Hungary, and for Hungary, which lost, the Kingdom of Hungary lost about 2/3 of its territory and through the Treaty of Trianon. So here, again, for a little more context, you can see that a very large part of Hungary, Austria-Hungary, was comprised by what is now the area that was the Kingdom of Hungary and includes present-day Hungary. And then you have other areas like number 6, which is Galicia with Lemberg, now Lviv, and number 1, which is Prague in the Republic of Czechoslovakia. Austro-Hungary at its height was a very powerful, very large country. Here's another map that shows specifically Galicia, and as you can see, it's right next to the Kingdom of Hungary, which will help to explain why that migration occurred from Galicia into the Kingdom of Hungary. Galicia, by the way, is also called Lodomeria. And here's what happened as a result of the Treaty of Saint-Germain, which eliminated Galicia. And the people who lived in Galicia then had a choice of nationalities. Depending largely on where they lived, they might become Poles, they might become Czechs, they might become Hungarians or Romanians. But you can see the amount of land area that was affected by that treaty. And here's the map that a number of you have seen before. This is the dismemberment of Hungary, a map that to this day is used by Hungarian nationalists who would like to get all or most of that territory back. To the north, you have the area that went to the new nation of Czechoslovakia, and is now includes in the western part Slovakia, in the eastern part some areas like Maramarsh-Siget went to Romania, and Beregszás, which is now in Ukraine, Ungvar and Munkacs, which are now in Ukraine. And then you've got the rest of Hungary down to the lower right, excuse me, the rest of Romania down to the lower right. So the JewishGen Hungarian Research Division, and that's what we're called now, although many people continue to refer to us as a SIG, we are now officially a division of the Museum of Jewish Heritage in New York. The president of the museum is very enthusiastic. He actually has a Hungarian background and is very enthusiastic about genealogy. So we've been really officially adopted into the museum, which we all dearly hope is going to increase the funding available to all of us to acquire more records, carry out more projects. So the Hungarian Research Division is for people who are researching Jewish families from the area that we refer to generically as Greater Hungary or pre-Trianon Hungary. It covers all the areas that were part of Hungary before World War I, as shown in this map of the Hungarian kingdom, including lands now in Hungary, the existing nation of Hungary, as well as areas of Slovakia, all of Slovakia, areas now in Romania. So you've got the western part here, Maramarsh, Satmar, Zilag, Zolnok, Deboka, Besters. Over here, down in the farther down, you've got areas that are now in Romania as well. And other areas are now in Ukraine, Austria, Croatia, Bosnia, and Serbia. The records that we have are found primarily in Hungarian, Slovak, and Romanian archives. But as I will be mentioning, we now are obtaining, and they're largely in the Sub-Carpathian collection, lots of records from Ukraine. So the Sub-Carpathia division covers the region of Sub-Carpathia that includes formerly Hungarian areas in Bereg, Ugotza counties, and parts of Maramuresh and Ung counties that are now in Ukraine, but previously, and again, depending on the year, were in Czechoslovakia right after World War One, Hungary prior to World War One, and for a period in the interwar years, they became Hungary again, and the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic. We've carved out a separate research division because these records are in Ukraine archives, and accessing them and sorting through the inventories requires the knowledge of Ukrainian. This division is ably led, fantastically led by Laura Diamond, who took over a sort of very moribund function and has created a very, very productive division that has been generating lots and lots of records for people who have families who lived in Ungvar, now Uzhhorod, Munkac, now Mukachev, Berehov, formerly Beregsas, and other parts of what is referred to now as Sub-Carpathia. And just a few words about the JewishGen Poland collection. That's where you will find records from Galicia. And for those of you who know where your relatives lived in Galicia prior to emigrating to Hungary, you may well be able to find those records. The Polish archives have made them accessible. You can actually download a lot of the original pages from vital records. And then they have other documents like the 1891 Galicia Business Directory, Holocaust records, and so forth. So what does the Hungarian Research Division do? We acquire and transcribe records. This is probably our primary function, as far as I'm concerned, is getting records, transcribing them to grow the JewishGen Hungary database, which I'm proud to say, despite the fact that there are fewer formerly Hungarian members of JewishGen than Poland, for example, or a lot of other countries, we have one of the largest databases because we've got an absolutely marvelous group of volunteers. And as I'll get to the records, I'm going to mention some of them who are in this audience. We promote the creation of Hungarian Kahila Link site, and these are websites commemorating the ancestral places where our families came from. We have sponsored IHAGS conference sessions in the past. It's been difficult during the more recently, first because of COVID and also because of holding the IHAGS conference in far-flung places like London, which some of us have found too expensive to get to. So there isn't going to be much of a Hungarian presence in London, but I hope we'll be back in full force next year in Philadelphia and live. And at the conference, we have traditionally held a Hungarian luncheon, offering presentations, include speakers who've shown films that they made about topics related to Hungarian Jewish families. And we hold our annual business meeting. At the meeting in London, Jordan Auslander, a very active genealogist, member of who's been participating in Hungarian activities for many years, is going to be presenting a slideshow that I'm going to provide to him and summarizing for those who attend what we've been up to. The image shows Karas Vandor, one of our favorite speakers, who is a fantastic genealogist based in outside Budapest, and he is Jewish, and he is extraordinarily fluent in English, and he seems to know just about every Hungarian Jew. And I traveled with him in Hungary and had that experience. No matter where he goes, people know him. So this is probably what a lot of you tuned in to hear. This is what we've been doing for the past 12 months. We, during the plague, we spent a lot of time transcribing records that we had previously acquired. And now, beginning in the end of 2021 and 2022, we've been able to get back into the archives. So we do have researchers at work in Europe who are generating digital images for us. And that has enabled us to continue to grow our fantastic Hungarian database. We added more than 6,000 new vital records to the vital records collection, which is sort of really the heart, birth, marriage, and death records. We're now collecting a lot of civil records, and I'll be talking about the difference between Jewish records, parish records is what they were traditionally called, and civil records in a bit. But we've increased that collection to about close to 842,000. The more recent additions include a lot of records from Slovakia that Peter Absalon, who is our man in Košice, Slovakia, has digitized. And many of you have been supporting that project. We now have close to 121,000 what we call other census records. They are primarily from 1770 to 1875, but we've got some more recent records. They're still labeled as being 1770 to 1875, but we have records such as the 1930 Czechoslovak census, which is an other record, and a number of other records from the 20th century. One of the great accomplishments has been adding close to 29,000 records for Buda, Pest, and the surrounding communities in Pest, Pilish, Mid, the county in which Budapest is located. Eric Block, who I know is, who I saw is signed into this session, is the coordinator of this project. And what he does is work with the records. He is people identify records that they found primarily in the Hungarian state archives. But we've gotten them from some other, excuse me, places as well. And as we raise funds, we get the digital images, and then Eric works with volunteers to transcribe them. So one of the things that we're interested in is anybody who does search the collection at the Hungarian State Archives, which is pretty extensive. If you see records that are not in our collection, let Eric know and we'll see what we can do to get hold of those digital images. A number of the other census records are from Slovak archives. One of our really phenomenal accomplishments, and Peter Absalon gets the credit for this, is that during the past 12 months, we've completed transcription of records for all of the Jews who were living in what is now Slovakia, whose names appear in the 1930 Czechoslovak population census. This set of census records provides, in some cases, the last snapshot of the Jewish population of Slovakia prior to the Shoah. I found in the records, I was able to confirm what happened to several of my great aunts who I knew were living in Košice. I had heard from other relatives, but I didn't know where. And I found them in the records, and it turns out one sister who was from Homina moved in with her sister from who was from Košice, and then it turns out that the son of my great aunt from Homina, he's living in on the same street, and he's listed in this census as well. He unfortunately, he died on the Russian front after being conscripted into the labor battalion. He died in January 1943. Laura has also added close to 1,000 records from the 1921 census of Sub-Carpathia. So this is from Jews living in areas of Czechoslovakia that are now in Ukraine. The 1930 Czechoslovak population census does not cover any of these areas in Sub-Carpathia. It only covers Slovakia, and we obtained the records from, the records have been transcribed by the Slovak archives. They're available to download from a website called Slovakiana. The records for the 1921 Sub-Carpathia census just to cover Jews living now in areas that are now in Ukraine. And that this is up on the web, included in the Sub-Carpathian database, which is accessible from the Hungarian search page, and includes very useful information for people who had families from Munkac and Beregsas and other places that are now in Ukraine. We have acquired additional civil records from Maramuresh and other counties like Zolnok, Doboka, that were previously not in what was historically Maramuresh Mej County, Hungary, but they are in Maramuresh. So the records are in the same archives in Bayamare, and we've acquired a lot of those as well. I mentioned Sub-Carpathia. The database has more than 58,000 new Sub-Carpathian records. And these are civil records. So Hungary began civil registration in October of 1895. Prior to that time, the rabbi or the pastor or the priest from the local village were the ones who recorded events, births, marriages, and deaths. After October 1895, there were Jewish communities that continued maintaining those Jewish records, but now everybody was supposed to register with the authorities. These records have a completely different format. They take, for birth records, it's one full page. For marriage records, it's 2 pages. And we have a cheat sheet that has helped volunteers transcribe those civil records. So those have been added to the website. Be aware that the introductions that you will find on the Hungarian, on the JewishGen website are not up to date in some cases. So please go ahead and search, even if the introduction and the inventory of towns doesn't mention the place in which you're interested. It may be in the database and we just haven't yet uploaded the introduction. And finally, one of the most important long-awaited projects was launched over the past 12 months, and that is the 1869 census for Ung County. These records are in Ukraine. We finally found a researcher in Ungvar, Uzhhorod, who has been able to, once they lifted the restrictions on access due to COVID, he was able to get into the archives and begin digitizing these records. Volunteers, including Debbie Corman, and I didn't check everybody on the list for today, but I expect there may be other volunteers who worked on this project. We've been fortunate to have a number of volunteers working on this effort who are fluent in Hungarian, they're native Hungarian speakers, and the results have been marvelous. Prior to now, the only way you could get these records is to pay a lot of money to one of 2 researchers, and one of them, I believe, isn't even available nowadays. But that's been the only way to pay for these pages. And once we're done, they're going to be available to everyone without charge. Although if you want to be able to search on multiple fields, we do request a $100 a year donation to the Hungarian General Fund, not to the to the JewishGen General Fund, not the Hungarian General Fund. The JewishGen General Fund is what supports the maintenance of all of our websites. So we now have, the volunteers have completed transcribing. They've got close to 2,000 records, which I've been reviewing, and I just found another volunteer interestingly, in San Francisco, who has volunteered his services to help with the validation. So I hope to get those records up and incorporated in the the Hungarian database very soon. And here is the Hungarian database. So if you haven't checked out this page, do so. And one of the things about this that some people don't realize is if you click on a component database, it will tell you more about what's in that database. It tells you where the data came from, what the format of the database is, what the contents are, the number of records we've got by places, and identifies the project coordinator. Most cases lists the volunteers who made this all possible. So if you click, for example, on other Hungarian census records, you'll get this URL. So other Hungarian census records are here. And this will give you the details about what's in that database. And here's a little more about the other Hungarian census records. This is what we've got in that collection now. And I'm wondering, Janice, can you unmute Eric Block if he's willing to say a few words about what additions have been made?
Yes, I can.
Eric, could you?
Yeah, hi.
Say a few words. Great.
A few words. I apologize for not starting my video. I had some nasal surgery done a few days ago, corrected deviated septum, not presentable for prime time yet. So another issue, I have to admit, I have not been able to do much with the other Hungarian census in the past year. As I think you know, Vivian, my wife had passed away last September after 53 years of marriage, and I just haven't really been able to focus on those genealogical hobbies. However, I am currently working on in collaboration with Judy Peterson, a Seneca Nyitra 1841 family list. She's transcribing and I'm validating that. When my wife got sick, I was working on the 1833 Budapest family list. I need to get back into that so we can get it completed and put it online. And that's really the extent of what I've been able to do over the past year. Hopefully in the future, we'll be able to order more records, put together the transcription team again, and get that process moving along. So that's about it.
Great. Thank you, Eric. And I know we're all sorry for the loss of Judy and your wife, Judy, and are glad that you're recovering from your surgery. So,
Yeah, thank you.
as one of the items I mentioned here that I'm responsible for, we did acquire census records from Ung for 1782 to 1847, which were transcribed by a team, again, including a lot of people who are number of people who are very fluent in Hungarian. And I'm validating and reviewing that list as well. It's a tough one because the oldest records are in Latin. And Judy Peterson was very involved in the work on this project as well, did a marvelous job. So the Vital Records Project, as I mentioned before, it's really the heart of the collection that we have. We've gotten extraordinary number of records here, and now that we've been able to get into archives in Ukraine and additional archives in Slovakia, we've added a lot of records from those places. The most recent additions are primarily from places in Slovakia, and many of these were digitized by Peter Absalon and transcribed by volunteers working with him. We uploaded almost 22,000 new records since January 2022. So if you haven't checked the Vital Records for a while, do so. And there are some techniques for testing. You need to remember, first of all, that people very often moved to nearby communities, so you need to be aware of other places in the immediate vicinity where your families may have lived, and search those places as well. And this is why it's very useful to have an idea of Hungarian, both current and former Hungarian geography and place names. I rely heavily on this, which you can see in the upper with my picture. This is Jordan Auslander's genealogical gazetteer of the Kingdom of Hungary, which was published by Avoteno, and mine is extremely well thumbed, because what it does is list every tiny little place that was in the Kingdom of Hungary, and indicate what alternative names were for those places, indicates where the Jews from that community worshipped, and that's where the records where they were registered in many cases. And then it's got a cross-reference at the back of the book, which lists the current names of places that were formerly in the Kingdom of Hungary. This is why understanding that history is so important. I had an email today, in fact, from somebody who was looking for a place that she said was near Trenčín. And when I looked at the gazetteer, I see there are 3 places by that name, and the one that's in Trenčín has actually a different name. And the others are not in Trenčín. They're located in Ung and Šaroš, and Hunt County. So it's important to understand what are the current names, because many people are familiar with what they heard from their families, which may be the name that the place had at the time that they immigrated. Or it may be the name of the place in Yiddish. And you need to understand what the names of those places were in Hungarian. Unlike some of the other divisions, we did not start out listing the current names of places in Hungary. We have been doing that more recently with records from Moravia. But going back to add that information is going to require a lot of work, so we haven't done that at this point. The records in this collection include, say now, 250,000 birth, marriage, and death records from Pest, which was the part of Budapest where most of the Jews lived. 36,000 from Miskolc, which was the second largest city in Hungary, and more than 45,000 from Bihar, which is actually now in Romania. So Oradea, which was formerly Nagyvarad and is known as, I found out, Varadi and Varadas in some families, that is was in Bihar. Nagyvarad is in Bihar. We are raising funds now to acquire 23 civil registers from Oradea, again, formerly Nagyvarad, that'll cover the years 1914 to 1920. And that'll substantially increase what we've got available to research families from Nagyvarad, Oradea, and the surrounding communities in what is now Romania. One of the things to bear in mind with respect to Hungarian, Romanian, and Slovak vital records is all of these countries now have 100-year privacy rules, which means they will not make available to the public records for births, marriages, or deaths that occurred within the last 100 years. In fact, if the record is in a book that includes records from within the last 100 years, even if the event you're looking for is older, you can't see that book. I had that experience when I was in Romania, and the only way I was able to look at the register for the town, now Orasunu, formerly Avas-Uivaros, in eastern Satmar County, where my maternal ancestors lived, is because I managed to communicate in my very poor Hungarian with the mayor, and he let me look over the shoulder of the clerk while she leafed through the pages, and I was able to find some records that were less than 100 years old that way. But normally you're not going to have access to those records. So keep watching. We will continue, as funds allow, to acquire digital images of these records. I mentioned the Slovak Archives. Oh, one more word about the Vital Records Project. The Vital Records Project was started by Carol Robinson, who we lost earlier this year, tragically. And after Carol started it as the All Hungary database, it was it subsequently was named the Hungarian Jewish database. When she retired from this volunteer assignment, the work was taken over by the late Sam Schleman, who also did a fantastic job, and I know many of you remember him. He's from Pennsylvania, outside Philadelphia. This project is now headed up by Sarah Feuerstein, who lives in Toronto or outside Toronto. And she's busy with grandchildren and other things, so she's not always able to respond quickly, but she's doing a great job and is very thorough with the job she does with transcriptions. So that work continues thanks to the groundwork that was laid by Carol and Sam. So the Slovak Archives Project, which has resulted in the digitization and transcription of both census and vital records that are now included in other collections, is the brainchild of Peter Absalon from Košice. It started off as a project called Abau Torna, which is the county in which Košice, formerly Kos, Kassa in Hungarian, was located. And eventually he went on and transcribed records, all the records he could find from the entire county. And then he started a project that is intended to ultimately transcribe every record in Slovak archives that may list Jews who lived in that area. And essentially what he did was start in Eastern Slovakia, and he's working his way across the country. He is transcribing records or digitizing records, not only from the Slovak state archives, but also from their regional branches. So a lot of records that previously you were only able to get your hands on by contacting the branch of the Slovak state archives, first of all identifying them and then finding them. And he's also found records in municipal archives. It is important to remember, none of these records have been filmed by Family Search. So, and that's the case for many of the records in the Hungarian Jewish database. Family Search has just not gotten into these areas. They do have some records from Ukraine. They have some records from Poland, and they have a marvelous collection of Hungarian civil records that I'll talk about in a moment additionally, but they don't have these records. So the best place to find them is either you go there, hire an archivist yourself, hire a reacher yourself, or go to the database. We're able to do this because of donations to the Slovak Archives Project, which you can find on our Jewish generosity page. And some of the components are all of the available vital records from Abo Torna, where Košice is located, Zemplin and Ung. And this is really great information, particularly the information from Ung, because some of these records later on or earlier are only available in Ukraine. But there are branch archives that have records from places that were in the eastern part of Slovakia, in the western part of Ung County, which extended into Ukraine. So great collection of records. And as I mentioned, also the 1930 Czech census was generated by this project. Whoops. Okay. Get back here. Okay. The Marmarish Jewish records. First phase was completed in 2012 by Brooke Schreier-Gans, and it included all of the Jewish registers from about 1850 to 1895. Again, the beginning of civil registration. Sandy Malik, whose family is from this part of Hungary, took over that project. And since then, we have acquired lots of civil registers. Phase 2, which has been underway since 2014, involves both Jewish and civil registers. We've got recent acquisitions from Siget, Shaney, formerly Zenerva, more than 26,000 records, primarily from civil registers. And Sandy also transcribed, and we've uploaded 7,200 records for survivors from Marmarish County who returned afterward from Siget to Siget and to surrounding communities. Daniel Horowitz, who is best known to most of you as the man behind My Heritage, has family from Borșa in Romania, and he got hold of 2 books from the Jewish community in Sighetu, formerly Siget, and made the records available to us. Sandy transcribed them. You can access those records from the Holocaust database. I believe if you search the name in the Hungarian Jewish database, the records will also come up, but I'll talk about the Holocaust database. Make sure if you have records if you have family from this area who survived and you want to know more about them, to check out that database. So Eric and I both spoke about the other census records, what we've got. And again, most of these records are not available on Family Search. We've been acquiring them from the Hungarian State Archives. And we need to raise funds to acquire more records. So we also have a collection of vital records from Transylvania called Székely in Hungarian. And Dina Whitman has been enthusiastically coordinating this project. After she acquires the records, she turns them over to Sarah, so they are included in the Hungarian Vital Records collection. And this is a snapshot of what we have from those records. And you can donate to that project directly also from the Hungarian Jewish generosity page. Little more detail about research in Sub-Carpathia. This is what Laura's been doing, and she's got an extensive description available on a blog that she has created and maintains about strategies for finding these records. And you can go to that site to get more information. Okay, the Hungarian Holocaust database. It includes deportation, prisoner, and ghetto lists, including ghettos in other areas where, in some cases, Hungarians were incarcerated. It includes testimonies from the USC Shoah Foundation project. Yisker book, necrologies. The necrology is the list of people who were believed to have been murdered in the Shoah from that community. And be aware that this information is not always accurate. I have in some cases found individuals who I know survived, but what they did to create these necrologies is to get information from other people from the Jewish community in that town, who identified people who in some cases were deported but survived. So you need to check all of the available resources. The database also includes some unique files like, or data sets like Hungarian speaking families who wanted to immigrate to Palestine. A 1941 Slovak Jewish census. So this is records for more than 18,000 Jews who were living in towns in Slovakia before they were deported. And one of the things to remember about Slovakia is those towns that remained in Slovakia, which was part of Czechoslovakia during the war, were deported in 1942. But those areas that had been ceded back to Hungary in the Vienna Awards of 1938, they were ceded by the Nazis to reward Hungary, which of course was in the Axis. So Jews in those areas weren't deported until 1944. So I had the eerie experience of being in Slovakia a few years ago, traveling from Michalovce, formerly Nojmihai, the last place in what was formerly Hungary, where my father and his family lived before coming to the United States, and going from there taking a short bus ride to Sobrance, which is where the family originally lived. The Jews from Michalovce were deported in 42. The Jews from a few kilometers away in Sobrance and surrounding communities were deported in 1944. So very eerie and sad stories. Hungarian Holocaust databases include a Holocaust memorial database that we created. Larry Cohn came up with that idea. It has, I think we now have more than 23,000, it's maybe well over that number, transcribed from Holocaust memorials that people come across in communities in present-day Hungary, Romania, Slovakia, and Ukraine. What we've asked people to do is, if they travel to any of those countries and you see a Holocaust memorial, take a legible picture of the names and let us know about it. And if it's not included in the list of places already included in the database, we'll get it transcribed and add it to the collection. One of the most interesting items in this database is the Wallenberg passport list. So you have no doubt all heard of Raoul Wallenberg. We tried for a long time to find out more about what was in that list, or where was that list, who got that protection. And I got an email, actually Nolan Altman, who heads the Holocaust project. He and I were contacted by Peter Londay from the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Division, who said, I came across these records that I think might be of interest to you. And what they are, here on the right side of the page, is a sample of what we got. These are records for individuals who received Schutz passes or passports from Wallenberg. And I actually had a volunteer who worked on this project who found her own name on the list. She and her family were saved. This list was created by those very thorough Nazis. And because these were people who claimed to be Swedish citizens, so they wanted a list of them. And what it lists is the name of every individual living in the household, the name of the mother of each individual, her maiden name, the date of birth, the place of birth. If an individual, a male in the household, was serving in the labor battalion, that information is provided as well. So fascinating resource. I worked with the team of transcribers, and we transcribed more than 3,000 records, which are searchable on the Holocaust database. Holocaust database also includes information for people who received a similar type of passport from the Spanish legation in Budapest. Interesting, even though Spain obviously Franco supported the Nazis, his legation in Budapest was headed by Angel Sanz Briz, who was very troubled by what was happening to the Jews of Hungary. So he created a similar program to provide certificates or passports to Jews in Budapest. The database also includes survivors from Debrecen, Slovakia, and other names coming from lists published in periodicals. We have a list of forced laborers, Jews who served in the labor battalions. There used to be a searchable database in the Hungarian military archives, a searchable database online, and they pulled it. We don't know why. There is another website now, and I actually just got the URL for that from Nolan Altman, and it doesn't include as much information, but there is a lot of information available in the Yad Vashem central database, which has been transcribed from a collection called Nevek, Names, that was created by the Klarsfelds. So that is a better source to find people from the who were serving in the labor battalions. And we also have an index of Jews who were at Theresienstadt. So, Worldwide Burial Registry. This is another project that Nolan Altman heads. We've got records and many, many headstone photos from cemeteries in Slovakia, in Transylvania. Now, they have them also from the rest of Romania, but I was particularly interested in those from areas that were formerly part of Hungary and Ukraine. And this includes, and this was current as of the last time I looked, 88 cemeteries in Hungary with over 48,000 burials, formerly Hungarian areas in Romania and Slovakia, and then cemeteries in all these places in Ukraine and Poland, which include information. And I always have to include these pictures of the headstones of my great-grandparents. On top is Miksha Neumann, my paternal great-grandfather. When I came across this headstone, which is in the cemetery in Sobrant, Slovakia, it was in 3 pieces on the ground. And through Peter Upsilon, I found a stonemason who I paid to re-erect the stone. And that's my great-grandfather with all of the information about him, and his Hungarian name was Neumann Miksha. On the bottom is the headstone in Keresmarok, Slovakia, for his wife, Otilia Polacek, who actually survived him. He died in 1897. She remarried after he died, I found out from the Hungarian database. This is her headstone in a cemetery on the other side, some distance away in Slovakia, in what was Sharosh County, what was Szepes County. And it identifies her father. You can't see it on this one, but there's an interesting acronym with her father's Jewish name spelled vertically, and her Hebrew name was Esther. So, Kahila Link's websites. These are websites for miscellaneous information from families, photographs, other family histories, things that we really don't have a way to incorporate them in the database. So we ask people to create a Kahila Links website, and Susanna Block and the late Barbara, whose last name escapes me right now, provided
Barbara Ellman.
Barbara
Barbara
Ellman, thank you very much. That's what happens when you get to be a senior. So Barbara and Susanna provided a lot of information online about how to create one of these websites. I did one for Sobrance. I found it wasn't the easiest thing to do, but I'm sure somebody is available to help you if you contact Susanna about that. And check the list on the Kahila Links website. The link is in the handout, and see if your ancestral village is included. There are a lot of other resources available online for researching families from Hungary. Hungariana is a phenomenal website created by the Hungarian Library of Parliament that has cadastral maps like the ones on top. It's got legal documents, deeds, dowry statements, school books, newspapers. It's completely searchable, although you should put names in, it's best to use the Hungarian form, last name, surname first, followed by first name. And because so many of us are unfortunate enough to have names that are the same as many other Hungarian Jews, put quotation marks around the name and see what comes up. I've found a lot of interesting information. I searched for Lipot Polacek, who was the father of my great-grandmother Otilia, whose headstone I showed. And it turns out I found a prison record for someone named Polacek Lipot, who was incarcerated. Doesn't happen to be he's not my second great-grandfather, but somebody who had the same name as him. I have, however, found a lot of other useful records. This is one of the best sources on Hungariana. Many of you may recall reading a number of years ago about a stash of records that were found in the wall of behind the wall of an apartment that was being renovated in Budapest. On closer examination, they turned out to be documents from a 1944 census of Budapest Jews. There's always been a lot of chatter about a 1944 census of Jews that Eichmann had prepared in order to identify Jews for deportation. And pieces of this census have showed up in a variety of locations. How these records got behind this wall, nobody knows. At least I haven't heard anything about that yet. But somebody may have found them and hid them, hoping that somebody would eventually do something good with them. And what's happened is the Budapest Municipal Archives acquired the records, and they are searchable at Hungariana. They have been indexed, and I'll show you in a moment what you can find. on the Hungarian website. And again, the URL is in the handout. You can search by name or street address, remembering that a lot of the addresses in Budapest in 1944 had different names than they have now, because they named them after, they took down the names of Hungarian patriots and replaced them with names of supporters of the Nazi, members of the Arrow Cross, people like Horthy, for example. So, but you can search by name also using the approach I mentioned. And it'll tell you a lot about the building. When was the building built? How tall was it? How many floors? How many apartments? Did it have any shops? And here's the important part. Is the main tenant required to wear a yellow star or not required to wear a yellow star? Obviously, if they had to wear a yellow star, they were Jewish. And the number of owners obliged to wear yellow stars. And then whether the whole house was inhabited by Jews. So here's what you get. This is from Hungarian. The collection is called, I don't know how I get rid of this thing. There it is. Flat Data Sheets, Budapest 1944 is the name of the collection. As I said, the link is in the handout. But if you search, this is what you find. So here's the street name. Here's the name of the chief tenant, the major occupant. And then here is a small shot of the page that was found in the wall. If you click on this colored text, what you get is this, which is a view of the page. So we will at some point probably transcribe, I'd love to transcribe all of these sheets so we can make them part of our searchable collection at JewishGen. But in the meantime, you can search Hungarian, and there's more information about how to do that in the handout. But this is what you find if you do that. Here are the names of the occupants. Here's the name of the chief occupant. And then you can see here, it says, are they required to wear the yellow star? And you check Igen, yes, or Nem, no. And Steiner Oskar was a Jew, so Igen is checked. Another great collection. This is actually a collection that I found when I started doing research many years ago. I was working for the city of Berkeley, and I was an adjunct instructor for UC Berkeley, and I went to the fantastic UC Berkeley library and looked for anything that might help me with my research. And I came across all of these books in Hungarian on the shelf. And since then, I have found that the entire collection has actually been digitized, is available online. It's called Magyar Zsidó Ok Leveltar, or Monumenti Hungariae Judaica, a monument or records of Hungarian Judaica. This collection has a very interesting history. It was compiled over a period of 77 years, starting in 1923. They ceased production during the war and then resumed after the war. I have a handout. I did a talk on this research, on this resource, which is abbreviated as MZO. At one, I believe the conference was in 2019, which provides a little information about how to search it. The contents are not in chronological order, but they do have a very, very good index of people's names and place names and topics. And they will refer to entries by number. So each item in each volume is numbered. In some cases, that item will include text in Hungarian, German, and or Hebrew, depending on when it was created. This compendium was created at a point where the Hungarians were very impressed by the German approach to historiography, where essentially they'd identify everything they could find and transcribe it. So that's what these scholars did, and Dr. Frisch Arman was one of the first to do it. Here's the cover from volume 1, which covers that is 1092 to 1539, very old records. And as mentioned here, it includes census records, in some cases which have not been transcribed, rabbinical court records, business transactions, inheritance records. The records are limited to the extent that they don't cover every part of Hungary. They have a lot of records, in some cases whole volumes, for counties in Western Hungary, which were the ones that were settled first, as I mentioned. But they also have information for Moravia. So there are excerpts from one of the old Jewish censuses for Moravia County, in which I found some of my relatives. I also found a record that showed that my ancestor came into Hungary from Moravia in 1740, and he was traceable. I was able to trace from my great-grandmother Otilia Polacek Neumann back to this Mr. Spitz, who came from Moravia in 1740. So fascinating collection. Another good source, this is an organization in Hungary with whom we partner, because they have a number of very active Jewish members. The name translated into English is the Hungarian Society for Family History Research, which is abbreviated as MAKSE, listed the full Hungarian name on the top. And what they've done is the volunteers have gone to Family Search and gone through, in particular, the Hungarian civil registers. And Family Search has a very, very large collection of Hungarian civil registers. And they have transcribed the records and have direct links to the page. Some of the projects that they're now engaged in is linking Jewish individuals who are listed in Christian registers, and they have a lot of civil records also from places outside Budapest. Although the records are primarily from Budapest, you can search by the name of the town, again, in Hungarian, and it'll take you to records for that place. The membership fee is $30 US, and there's the URL for the website. And here's what you get. Parts of it are in English, so you can click on the British flag that'll appear up here. Now here you see the Hungarian flag and the German flag, so it's also available in those languages. And this is the first search page. So you can search on family name, and replace characters, so forth. If you have a hit, what you'll get is something like this. So here was a case where I searched for Kahn, my family name from Marmar Siget, and this is what came up. Yes, they have birth records, születések. These are marriage records and death records. There also are name changes in this collection, which has been very useful. I discovered that one of my great uncles, who I'd been searching for ages, for some unfathomable reason, decided to change his surname from Moshkevitz to Marcus. Why he thought Marcus sounded less Jewish than Moshkevitz is beyond me, but he did that. And I actually found that information. I found he also names other members of the family, including his daughter, who is a survivor, was a survivor, who changed her name as well. So enter information and it'll tell you what they have for that name, and then you go back up to the top and you can search see if the name appears in marriages and the name appears in the death records. And this is what you get. Here's a marriage listing. So this is the index that the volunteers have created, and it summarizes all of the information. And this family came up because you got down here a Kahn and up here a Kahn. So here's a record for Shmuel Shamu Kahn, whose mother's maiden name was Bluma Kirstenbaum, and they were from Debrecen. So it's one of the places outside Budapest for which they have records. If you click on the blue, it'll take you right to the page at Family Search where the record shows up. A bit about some of the other places you can search from JewishGen that may be helpful, even if you don't have family from Poland, because this is the way you can access records from Galicia. So go up to search and they'll explain how you search. And Gesher Galicia, which is also a nonprofit, and both Gesher Galicia and JRI Poland create records that are now searchable from the JewishGen website. And this is what Gesher Galicia, this is what they have available. And here's what JRI Poland has available. So here's how you search. You search by town name, and this is what you'll get. So this was the case. I was searching for Kahan from Kalisz, which is where my Kahan family originally lived. And no doubt these Kahans are related to me because that's where the first rabbi of Siget, who was my fourth great grandfather, this is where he was born, and all of his brothers and his father, they were all from Kalisz, which was in Galicia, is now in Stanislav, Ukraine, and these are the archives in Stanislav, and this tells you the collection. So you can actually click on view image and see the image. Finally, we've got another collection that'll be useful for people who have family from those parts of Hungary that are now in Ukraine or Transcarpathia. Alex Krakowski, who is a Ukrainian Jew who lives in Los Angeles now, sued to gain access to records in archives in Ukraine and was fortunately successful. His website lists the records by Ukrainian town names, but with the little manipulation, you can, if you find out the name in Ukrainian of the place you're searching. So here, for example, this is how you spell Sobrance which is where my paternal ancestors come from, in Ukrainian, Munkach, Berehov, Beregsas. Either go to this website, if it's still active, will help you navigation, or use Google Translate to figure out the names of places. And this is what you'll get. So even though you search in Ukrainian, so here's the cover of this volume, the records themselves are in Hungarian. So they're the same Hungarian records that we find every place else. And these cover the years 1887 to 1896, and they very thoughtfully include a list of places in both Romanic script and in Cyrillic of the names of the places that are included in this volume. So another great resource. And finally, there's a Gen Team, which has Austro-Hungarian records, not only records from Vienna and Lower Austria, Jewish records, but links to the World War I casualty list, Verluste-Liste. My German is not good, be worse than my Hungarian, but this happens to be a page that lists my uncle Jenner, who is listed down here, second from the bottom. Jenner, or Eugene, as I knew him, Uncle Eugene, was from Siohaza in Borshard County, and he was a second lieutenant. And I remember seeing the picture of him in his cute little helmet with the point on top, sitting in a trench. Unfortunately, I don't know what happened to that picture. But if you click on these records, it'll go to here's the source from which these pages, and you can scroll through these pages. But again, because as I mentioned, Jews, Hungarians served in the Austro-Hungarian army, you can find them in this list. And this is not only people who died, it's the list of names of everybody who served. And that's it. So thank you very much. And in all of the languages that you might want to know in order to research your Hungarian families, your Hungarian Jewish families. And I will stop sharing this, and I'd be happy to take questions.
Oh my goodness, do we have questions, Vivian? We're probably not going to be able to get through all of them. We have so
Okay,
many.
and
Tom
people-
Klein has been very helpful and has been answering several of them.
Great. I saw his name, and I know he is capable of very, very capable of doing that.
He
So
was
that's
being very
great.
self-effacing, but yes, he was very, very helpful.
He's fantastic. Yes.
Hold on, let's see.
And you also have my email address. So if you have further questions, do contact me by email.
Awesome. So yeah, if we don't get to your question today, send her your question. Are Jewish records from Modra, M-O-D-R-A, available online?
I don't know. You'll have to check.
Okay,
I mean,
somebody
I
did say that
showed-
they're on Family Search, so that helps.
Okay. Well, I'm saying check the JewishGen Hungary database, and I showed you how to do that. And that'll tell you whether we have them.
Somebody asked about records available from areas now in Serbia.
Yes, not a lot, a few.
Okay, but some.
Because they're in archives that are located in Serbia. And with the exception of, there is one researcher in particular who has been interested in this area, but we go into archives when we have a lot of researchers interested in the area who are, most importantly, willing to donate to acquire records and then willing to assist in doing the transcription. So, we count on all you volunteers.
Is it
to help
correct that
us.
Hungarian archives are closed in August?
I believe so.
Okay. Hold on, go back. I missed part of the message. When were surname adoptions in the area of Zemplin?
It depends. Most of the order from Joseph II to take surnames was in the latter part of the 18th century. But I have relatives who had surnames before then. So it depends, because there were people living in Zemplin County who may have come from other places where surnames were assumed earlier. And I also found people in 1848 in records from Romania who didn't use surnames. They were still using patronymics. So it varies. If you have yichus, if you have ancestors who were rabbis, probably more likely that the family had a surname. But also if they came from an area where people assumed surnames, and that was primarily Bohemia, Moravia, those parts of Hungary that are now in Austria.
How can one identify which communities continued to keep Jewish vital records after 1895?
The way the system works, the archives in the municipality would retain the records until they're 100 years old, and then they turn them over. They supposedly turn them over. The Hungarian Jewish registers, you in most cases should contact see if you can find a Hungarian Jewish community. Use Google. It's your good source for everything you want or need to know. Get contact information from the Hungarian Jewish community and find out if they have records, and if they do, who you should contact. There also are a lot of community records at the National Library in Israel. Sarah and I have gone through some of the records in their index, and it seemed like we have a lot of them on JewishGen already, but we have not gone through to see if there are parish records, and I'm using the generic term parish records to refer to Jewish records as well. We didn't go completely through their list of resources to see if they had Jewish registers that we didn't have. To be perfectly honest, I find the civil records and the records that we have transcribed prior to 1895 far more useful than Jewish community records. You know, a lot of the records just are lists of people who joined the burial society. So yeah, it's nice to know that my third great grandfather paid money to the Chevra in order to ensure himself a space. But, you know, I had his name already, and since his surname is Kahn, it wouldn't have helped me too much seeing that record. So I just don't find those records as useful as the records that were supposedly turned over to the Habsburg officials, and that are considered the official vital records prior to the start of civil registration.
Okay. Here's an interesting one. How would we add a genealogical book information into JewishGen? Mary Farkas has a copy of a book from 1939, which is in the Hungarian Jewish Museum. So if that information is not on JewishGen, how would that get added?
It depends on what's in the book.
Okay, Mary, I suggest you contact Vivian directly and let her know about that.
I mean, we don't have, you know, what we're looking for is registers, directories, that kind of record that has a name, a date, and a place attached to it. We don't have the capacity to search through books. That said, JewishGen does now publish Yisker books. And if it's something that might qualify as a Yisker book, they might be interested in publishing it. But this is why we suggest that people create Kahila links websites, because that's where you put that in, that material. And of course, donate it to a museum.
Okay. Does the 1848 census cover Gilmore Quichont communities?
We do not have any 1848 census records for places that are now in Hungary. We do not have all of the 1848 census records. So first thing I would say is check the website, because if you click on 1848 census, you will find a list of places that we have acquired. I don't recall off the top of my head whether we have Goma and Hunt, but if we don't have places in present day Hungary. So Not all the places are available. Some, we keep turning up records, and some of them are what Peter is finding in Slovak archive.
Okay, does the research division have vital records for, I don't do justice to Hungarian, Szilagyi, Megye, now in Romania.
Yes.
Aha.
Zilagyi.
Zilagyi, fine.
So it's yes, we do. Check vital records, please. I will say again, and actually do the search for the record. Zalau is the current name, but it's in Romania. So it's part of that Transylvania collection that Dina Whitman has been handling. She coordinates the acquisition of records and turns them over to Sarah Feuerstein, who supervises the volunteers who do the transcription.
Okay. Family Search apparently has Budapest marriage and death records for as recent as 1940. So how are they able to have that given the 100-year privacy rule?
It's apparently there is some agreement between the Hungarian archives, the Budapest archives, and Family Search. I've had that question myself and nobody's answered it, but consider yourself fortunate that those records are available.
Okay.
However they got there.
I think I know the answer to this one. When looking for records from Transylvania, some towns appear in the Hungarian database and some in the Romanian database. Is there a rule of thumb to figure out which towns belong to which database so I don't need to always research twice? And my guess is you should always research twice because you're not sure which one's going to show up where.
Actually, the only reason to research twice is if you don't know for sure that the place was formerly in Hungary.
Ah.
So if it was in Hungary, you could access it from the Hungary database. If it was in Ukraine, you can access it from either, or if it is in Ukraine, you can access it from the Ukraine database, the portal, the Sub-Carpathian portal, or from the Hungarian portal. But if it was formerly Hungarian, search the Hungarian database. People who end up in Romania when they shouldn't be, I'm in regular contact with Michael Moritz, who is the coordinator for the Romanian Research Division, and he refers people to me when they contact him about places that were in Hungary.
Do census records include all residents, including non-Jewish residents?
It depends which census. The 1869 census was a complete census. And in fact, one of the things that we're doing, which I proposed and I sort of designed the spreadsheet, so was my choice, is to include all non-Jews living in the same place of residence as Jews. So you'll find a lot of interesting situations where you have Jews working as servants for non-Jews. You have Jews who are hired as, or non-Jews hired as laborers by Jews. And one of the reasons why this is of particular interest to me is through DNA, I discovered that one of my paternal grandmother's brothers, or perhaps uncles, had a relationship with a non-Jewish woman. because there's this whole family from Pennsylvania who are related to me more closely. They're between second and third cousins, and they happen to come from the same area, from Sobrance, which is where my paternal ancestors lived. So, I'll probably never figure out which one of my great uncles or great grand uncles was the fellow who was good friends with Helena Furchik or Anna Vohar, but one of them was. So I think it is very important to recognize that, unlike Jews who lived in other parts of Europe, particularly Eastern Europe, the Jews in Hungary lived side by side with their non-Jewish neighbors, worked with them, were friends with them, and as I discovered in my own family, in some cases, had their lives saved by them during the Shoah.
Okay, somebody mentions a manuscript on a family history library film, Jewish BMD from, oh my God, I can't pronounce this. SATORJAUJHELY. Anyway, are those of the Hungarian database?
If it's if it's at Family Search, it probably is, because we started off the JewishGen database with records transcribed from films by the Mormons, now the Family Search Library. Now we have JewishGen actually has a close working relationship with Family Search, but Family Search is the Mormons.
That's true.
The Latter-day Saint.
Yes, that's true, because they don't like being, now the official line from the church is, even church members aren't supposed to use the word Mormon. They're supposed to use the entire name of the church, which gets very cumbersome for a church with such a long name.
Right.
Let's see. Well, a couple people asked about Stanislavov. You absolutely should be looking at Gesher Galicia's stuff, because that's what their whole focus is. Let's see. Yes, Vivian did mention Max. The handout. Oh, here's a good one. If someone is listed in different records as being born in Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, Austria, somebody was looking for Bitsko, and I don't know if Tom actually narrowed that down, but he was doing a good job. Let's see. Do you know of any common Jewish movement or migration into the Banat region from other places in Europe?
The migration into Banat, which is a part of Romania, then Hungary, that was settled by particularly people from Germany. So it would be under Sekeyi, and I don't know of any specific migration into the Banat. But a good person to contact about that would be Elizabeth Long, Beth Long, who is a researcher who lived in Hungary for a long time. I think she lives in Salt Lake City now. And she has researched that area extensively. But I don't know of any specific migration, but my understanding is primarily families from Germany.
Information on Jewish schools or other educational institutions in Sobrance.
Probably the best place to look for that is the Yisker book, which is on, I think portions of it are online. in the JewishGen Yisker book collection for Sobrons. There's another book that I found that at the library in Salt Lake City that listed Jewish schools at least during the 40s in Sobrons. But Sobrons's town hall was burned down and the synagogue was burned down. It may have been destroyed by bombing because the town was heavily bombed by the Soviets when they were coming from the east and fighting the Nazis who were coming from the west. So the town had a lot of damage, and it's hard finding records in the town, but the Yisker book would have some information.
Alex Krakowski is now living in Los Angeles.
That's what I heard.
I had not heard that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think that probably covers most of it. We've taken overtime anyway. I just put the URL for the handout in the chat again, so you can try to download it before we quit the meeting, which will be very soon. If your question was not answered, Vivian's email address is on the handout. And I'm sure she will make some time to answer queries because she's a wonderful person. Thank you so much, Vivian, because this, as usual, was amazingly informative and it took up a lot of your time on a Sunday. So enjoy the rest of your Sunday. All the rest of you also enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Thank you for coming. I will let you know our next 2 meetings coming up. On August 13th, Steve Morse is going to be talking about the basics of DNA and in particular in relationship to Jewish research. And on September 10th, Daniel Horowitz of My Heritage is going to be talking about, if you don't have a lot of time for research, how to make the most of the time you have. So thank you all for being here. Looking forward to seeing you possibly at future meetings, and have a great day. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you all.